All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday Night Rabbit Hole. I'll share this screen. Yeah, let's see it all. And so what? Bam, they heard it all. They heard it all. There we go. Good evening, everybody. And good evening, Uncle Milty, Ramblin' Wreck, Simply Sue, Canuck, of course. Thank you for being here. Walleye King, thank you for being here. One Eden, Robin's Nest, and Susan and Timmy, and all the other ones who don't want to be notified because you're decide you don't want to. All righty then. Tonight we're going to be talking about the San Jacinto fault with mainly Canuck's going to be leading this. I won't be asking questions, and we're going to talk about it. The San Jacinto fault basically is located as being part of the San Andreas fault zone. It's it's west of the San Andreas, and it encompasses I think about 125 miles thereabouts. And I don't know how long it tells it here. There's a lot of different segments. There's a lot of segments. So we're going to talk about these segments tonight. So in this image here that I'm showing people over on Twitch, which I should show people on wait, it's not going to let me, so I gotta share another screen. Wow, that should have let me do that. There we go. Bang. We're going to refer to this one quite a bit tonight. San Andreas is right here, and wait, do you guys see that over there? No, you don't. Show on. There you go. All right, San Andreas is right here. The San Jacinto is from right here, basically Wrightwood, all the way down to the Mexican border. And it goes probably beyond and into the Imperial. The other fault is the Elsinore fault, which goes from the San Gabriel Mountains all the way into the Laguna Salada, which it goes into the Sea of Cortez. And then there's some other main faults off the coast. And this is our series of main faults that go northwest to southeast in Southern California. And we will talk about east-west faults and their relationships with the San Andreas, the Elsinore, and the San Jacinto. But tonight, strictly trying to talk about the different segments and the details and the events of the great San Jacinto fault.
Yep.
All right. So we'll go ahead, Canuck. And first of all, do you have any opening statements you want to say, or do you just want to dive right into it?
Well, I'll just give a little summary of like how I want to do this tonight, and we'll see how far we get.
Okay, buddy.
But so I want to give Joe's already said a few things already, the basics, but we're going to go into more detail and learn how they broke down the segments of it. We're going to go through a chart that they have listed for each segment that they figured out when the last time it's gone off. Either it was witnessed by people, so in the last 200 years, or they've done studies on that specific segment to find out when it last went off. So we're going to see a chart a little bit later about that. And then after that, we get through all that stuff. We're going to go through the last, technically in the last 200 years, it's 7 major quakes. So quakes above 6.0 is how I did it. So I'm going to start going down through each of those and figuring out where they came from and how they got there. But
So let's
I don't know. Yeah, I don't
talk
know.
about the boundaries of the fault zone. I'll read off a little thing that's right out of the Wikipedia. The San Jacinto Fault Zone is a major strike slip fault zone that runs San Bernardino, Riverside, San Diego, and Imperial counties of Southern Cal. The SJFZ is component of the larger San Andreas transform system and also considered to be the most seismically active fault zone in the area. Together, they relieve the majority of the stress between the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. The San Jacinto Fault Zone itself consists of many individual fault segments, some of which only been individualized as recently as the 1980s, but actively along the line of faults has been documented since the 1890s. One of the segments of the San Jacinto Fault Zone is the Anza Seismic Gap, has not experienced any major activity since instrumental records have been kept. Each segment was evaluated for its seismic risk and was assigned probability for the occurrence of a large rupture for the 30-year period starting in 1995. While several of the large earthquakes along the San Francisco or the San Jacinto fault zone may have not resulted in significant property damage or loss due to the remote location, the cities of Hemet, San Jacinto were both heavily damaged in two significant events, 1899 and 1918. The reoccurrence interval of the series of large earthquakes starting in 1899 include 5.9 in 1937. Terry Wiggler Valley earthquake was 18, 5, 14, 5, 12, 14, 19 years. Yet these there has not been a strong earthquake for at least 36 years since 1987 Superstition Hills and Elmo Ranch sequence. All right, go for it, buddy.
Okay, so
That's the intro.
yeah. So the article I'm using is the longer one, so I think you're reading from
Okay, that's fine.
from the shorter one. But it basically is the same information. They're just expanding on it more in the one that I'm looking at. Because you basically went down to.
I was at the top, buddy. I just read it from the top.
Yeah, because where it starts talking about the
characteristics.
Yeah, the segment parts is where I'm going to start.
Okay, cool. Go listen. Well, let me read the characteristics then. The San Jacinto Fault Zone and the San Andreas Fault Zone accommodate up to 80% of the strike slip or the slip between the North American and Pacific plates. The extreme southern portion of the San Andreas Fault has experienced two moderate events in historical times, while the San Jacinto Fault Zone is one of the California's most active fault zones, has repeatedly produced both moderate and large events. The locations of earthquakes before 1954 Arroyo Salada earthquake are not precisely known, but the events placed them on the San Andreas or San Jacinto fault zone and not the San Andreas fault. In 1923, the North San Jacinto Fault earthquake struck the Inland Empire area of Southern Cal at the time of relatively low population. A repeat event in modern times would result in heavy damage and loss of life. So basically what they're saying is they're still not certain where some earthquakes, they know these earthquakes have happened. They're not sure where they happened, the epicenters. However, the San Jacinto is one of the greater probabilities. And that's what that last statement's meant. So we're going to talk about the different segments. I'll let Canuck continue from here.
Yeah, so the little chart is right there in the same section, but
you just count out how many there are.
Yeah, so they finally decided that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 segments to it now. But under this segment section that's in the Wikipedia article, I'm going to give you the summary of it. When they first started doing this in the 90s, up until 95, they'd only done like 5 segments. But as it went farther into the 90s, they added a couple more. So they made 7. So basically that's what the segment section here is all explaining. So what I want to talk about next is the chart. And then after all this, I'll start going in to like all the most recent quakes in the last 200 years that we have more info on.
All right.
Yeah. So they break the segments down. I'm going to read the segments off first, and then I'll explain more about those after. So the first one is the San Bernardino segment, which is basically from Cajon Pass all the way down to where San Jacinto Valley starts, basically. So they say that they have in the chart in kilometers, so 35 kilometers long. And for the San Bernardino segment, based upon people feeling quakes, and that the last one on that segment that they think was really big was 1890.
All right, so it goes from Cajon Pass, which is basically right up here, and I've got a map that's going. So it's right up here, all the way down to what city? What city they said the San Bernardino?
Yeah,
Probably Loma Linda.
It just says the start of San Jacinto Valley.
Okay.
When I read it, whatever that means.
Oh, San Jacinto Valley. Okay.
Yeah.
And Moreno Valley. San Jacinto Valley is like right here. Loma Linda. Yeah. Just the other side of Loma Linda. All right. So the next one.
Yeah. Number 2 is the San Jacinto Valley itself.
Right.
Which basically goes all the way down to Anza.
Yeah. So that basically starts Loma Linda all the way to down here is Anza.
Yeah. So that segment is 42 kilometers, and it last went off in 1918. So we'll talk about that quake. Mm-hmm. That one they actually call the 1918 San Jacinto quake, but we'll talk about that more later.
Okay.
Now, the next one is the Anza segment, which is the same as Anza Gap.
Yeah, I call it Anza Gap. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all the same thing. If you read down through when it talks about that segment, that's what it's talking about.
That's right through here.
Yeah. So they know based upon fault studies, because they've studied that segment, like dug trenches and figured out when the last time it went off. Mm-hmm. So they think 1750. And that one is 90 kilometers long, so it's fairly long.
That's the longest portion.
Yep.
So for basically from right here all the way down to here.
Yeah.
Or to Anza. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the next one they talk about is the Coyote Creek segment.
And that would be right through here, I think.
Which is one of the ones they added most recently. And they said it went off in 1892.
Right here, this red one. Coyote Creek, you can see it starts from right here. From Anza.
What magnitude was that, Canuck?
1892. It was the same year as there was another big Laguna Salada quake in, I think, that same year, 1892.
Yeah, they're seeing one in here in 1987. There was another earthquake, but we're not going to get into those yet, but you can continue.
No. Yeah, I'll talk about like the most recent ones.
And we're going to talk later. The next one's, go ahead, the next one.
Yeah, Borrego Mountain, which is 29 kilometers long, and that was in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next segment that they added, along with Superstition Hills, so this is one of the last ones they added, is Superstition Mountain. So it's 23 kilometers long, and that one was 1430, so they had to do fault studies on it.
From right here all the way down to here.
Yeah. And then the final segment is Superstition Hills.
That's this segment right through here.
Which they think is the bottom section, and that's one is 22 kilometers long, and it went off in 87. So that's the Superstition Hills quakes, which they also refer to as Elmore Ranch. So there was there was actually two together, like a 6 and a 6.5, but based upon those quakes happening, they consider that the end of the San Jacinto Fault. And if you look on the current maps now, which I don't have one, but I've looked at them, it shows that basically where the Superstition Hills segment actually pretty much connects into the Imperial Fault itself.
Yeah, that's down right here, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that one in 87 that you said that there was a 6 and a 6.5, did they two different faults go off at once, or was it two two different quakes at like a
They
very
didn't
short?
know at first. This is based upon what they studied afterwards. They were both on the Superstition Hills segment.
Okay.
Because at first they thought it was two different faults, but after they studied, they found out it was both on the same one, even though it was at slightly different locations. Because one was at Elmore Ranch and the other one was Superstition Hills itself. So they're pretty close together.
Right. They're going the same direction, and it's the San Jacinto fault zone, meaning there's a lot of faults that have little splays off of them, as you can see on your screen. The Superstition and the Superstition Hills, and then you see the Imperial Fault down here. And these sections, although it doesn't, like, it's not never in a straight line, but it is in a generalized vicinity, you know, like the Clark Fault, which is just interior here, and here's the Coyote Creek Fault. The Clark Fault looks like it goes into the Superstition Hills Fault, but they're calling all that the San Jacinto.
Yeah.
So the Clark Fault and the San Jacinto are synonymous, because here you got the creep and on the San Jacinto, right?
Yeah, there's like little faults that offset it or run into it, but they all consider them part of it now, basically. Like if you read all that stuff, I'm skipping over all the
right.
the blurbs in there. I'm trying to make it.
Yeah, the Clark Fault is the Clark Fault is the name of the fault. The zone name is the San Jacinto Fault Zone, and that's the Anza section of the San Jacinto Fault Zone. So that they have a way of doing things, and so that's it, how they do it.
Yeah, and the Superstition Hills quake, just as a note, happened the same year as the Whittier quake.
I didn't hear you.
The Superstition Hills Elmore Ranch quakes happened the same year as the Whittier quake.
Oh, all right. Well, shoot, howdy.
So we've kind of discussed that a little bit before, but
1987, yeah.
Yeah, so actually Whittier happened before Superstition Hills.
Okay.
So it's pretty interesting, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. Yeah, go ahead. Here's the Elmore Ranch. You can see. Make sure y'all can see that. Yeah, you can see that. So here's the Elmore Ranch. This is the Superstition Hills portion, and Superstition Mountain is right through here, and the Coyote Creek is right through here, and Anza is right through here, right? And then San Jacinto Valley, which is right through here. And you got Buck Ridge in there, fault, and Springs Fault, Hot Springs Fault, right? And Casa Loma Fault. That's all part of the San Jacinto. And then through San Bernardino, all the way up through here, the Glen Helen Fault. And it bleeds into the San Jacinto Fault Zone. So, and Lido Creek is part of that. At the top where San Jacinto reaches the San Andreas Fault, right through here. So again, this is really complicated, but there's a lot of faults that are equated, even the Rialto Colton Fault, as the San Jacinto Fault Zone, much like it is part of the larger San Andreas Fault Zone components, but it is its own system because there is a mountain range between the two, a pretty significant one, by the way. And it breaks into several of these little faults, but it's all part of the same system. And, you know, it's like, it's not a straight line or a crooked line. It breaks and splays off and comes back on. That's why the Buck Ridge Fault here, the Clark Fault, you know, Coyote Creek Fault, Coyote Creek down here, and the come on, stop that. You don't want to. Superstition Hills, Superstition Mountain, and then Imperial. And if you watch, the San Andreas kind of comes out here, but if you follow the San Hills Fault. That's where the San Andreas goes. Yet, because of these faults are so big, they make the San Andreas plop right over here and go down the Imperial Fault, which goes down into the East Pacific Rise down here in the Sea of Cortez at the end of it. So it's all of that's part of the same systems, adjacent one another, and can get very complicated. But laying that foundation, I think, Canuck, you want to talk about each individual. And
Yeah, I'm going to do each segment more in detail now. So I'm going to talk about the San Bernardino. I'm going to start right at the top and go down on
San
the list.
Bernardino, which is right through here. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to give my observations that I've found from all my other studies on recreating the quakes. And then I'll go into detail on, I don't know how far we'll get because it's going to take a long time to do each one, but we'll see. By the end of tonight, you probably will know pretty much everything you need to know about San
Well,
Jacinto.
that's the hope, is to inform people so they understand which part of the thrust or which part of the strike slip fault that's going on, or and all the different different types of faults that are there, and the different segments of the greater San Jacinto fault zone. So
So
we're going to go to the northern section first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to do San Bernardino Valley first. So the northernmost primary strand of the San Jacinto Fault Zone is the Claremont Strand through subsidiary parallel strands exist. Now, it's given the same stuff we already mentioned about how long it is, so I'm going to jump over that part. But it basically says from Cajon Pass to the San Jacinto Valley. And now the next line I'm going to talk about, within the San Bernardino Valley itself, the San Jacinto Fault Zone approaches or intersects the right lateral strike slip San Andreas fault to the north. But these next faults that that's going to say are important. I'll explain it after. The oblique normal Crafton, I think it is. Yeah. Hills Fault Zone to the east.
Yeah,
so this is going the other way towards the San Andreas, and the Cucamonga thrust to the west. Now,
here's the Cucamonga right through here.
Yeah, so that's important because in the last rabbit hole we talked about all the ones going east to west.
Lila Creek, Cucamonga, Red Hill.
Yeah, so those ones also connect going that way, because I found in my studies of the earthquakes, like that have been on out Santa Monica, Malibu way, there's always a quake that starts that in this same area, and they either refer to them as the Cajon Pass earthquake or Lytle Creek. You have to look up the two names to find where.
Lytle Creek's right through here.
Yeah, because they refer to them by both those names. So when I've been doing my recreate the quake pathway, that's what I had to look up. And I'll explain it more when I get into the other ones because it happens like every time. But anyway, so now it talks a series of moderate earthquakes affected this area in the 1890s, though it is uncertain how many of these occurred specifically on it, because they're going by what people felt and all that type of thing. And so they say the Claremont Strand has not had a major earthquake in the instrumental period, so that's going back in like to the mid 1880s. But the studies, paleoseismology studies, say it happened early in the 19th century, and that this section goes off every 160 to 200 years. Now, I've read it.
Here's the Crofton Hills right down here. Here's the Cucamonga. So we're talking about on the left-hand side, the Cucamonga, and the right-hand side, the Crofton Hills fault. Okay. That's, right here where the Badlands are. That's the beginning of the San Jacinto Valley right through here. So he's talking about right through here now. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so now I've read some of the newest studies on this section, which you have to look up. Cajon Pass studies, basically,
Which is
or
right in here.
Lytle Creek, but usually the most recent ones are under Cajon Pass. So anyway, the one I looked at is from 2018, and they were talking about, because they've done a whole bunch of other studies on that section, like just recently. So the most current one I could find was 2018, and they said that section has had a major quake, like above 7, but it's also including San Andreas too, because they found now that San Jacinto and San Andreas have gone off together 4 times in the last 1,000 years. So the last time was 1812. So we talked about 1812 before.
Yes.
But they have the actual dates going back all the way.
Which is up here in the red.
Yeah.
You see 1812 right up here.
1,000 years. But yeah, they figured out that it usually goes off with like a high 7 every 500 years, pretty much.
The entire fault or just that segment?
Well, they think it's San Andreas and that segment going all together.
Oh, okay. 1857 is the other one.
No, well, 1857. Yeah, 1857. They said was not San Jacinto that time.
Right, that's the San Andreas.
Yeah, it was just the San Andreas. But,
and that's this red line.
Yeah, but 1812, they say now, based upon all the studies they've done since 2016, because there's been multiple, that
right through Wrightwood. Yeah.
Yeah, so they think it's 4 times. No, it's in 2,000 years.
Right. So that's the one that we watched a documentary where it said right through here, through Wrightwood, which you'll see Wrightwood right through here, and the Cajon Pass, which is right down this highway, right? I've driven that thing many a times. Cleghorn Fault's off to the right. Snow Creek, Squaw Peak Fault, and the Glen Helen Fault, which is Glen Helen's right next to the freeway. It's very deep, and this thing's drops like, I don't know, 3,000 feet. It's a pretty good little drop from one side to the other, upper desert down to the lower valley down here in Fontana, San Bernardino. Quite a big deal coming down that pass, the Cajon Pass, and the conjunction here is from that video. They said that the San Andreas moved somewhat between 50 and 200 feet. So we're talking a massive quake that happened, what, 1,000 years ago? Was that the size, or was it 2,000 years ago there, Canuck?
Well, 1812, they think was. There's debate. Yeah, they debate if it's 7.9 or, but they say somewhere between, like, say 7.6 and 7.9. Right.
They said the 1812 was probably a combination of the San Andreas and the San Jacinto Fault. The 1857 is somewhere they don't know because there was hardly anybody there either. My family didn't get into San Bernardino until 1880s or something, 1890s.
Well, 1857, I think they think it was Wrightwood to Parkfield.
Yeah, that's the big one. Yeah. And that supposedly it moved that far.
Yeah, and
I heard one report say 200 feet.
Yeah, there is a study that says the 1857 quake is what set off the sequence of events on the San Jacinto since 1899. So there's an actual study that says that. Now, I didn't bring that up, but
it's called the 1857 Fort Tejon quake.
Yeah,
but the incredible movement, which you can see where rivers were here and the other side is like way the heck down the lane. It's pretty incredible.
So now I'm going to talk about the San Jacinto Valley segment. Well, it says there that it's 25 kilometers long. We already said that already. And it talks about how it's formed extension of a region of overlap between parallel strands. And it says the valley is bounded.
All right.
Yeah,
The
by the
Casa Loma Fault and Hot Springs
Claremont.
Fault.
Yeah,
Claremont.
Claremont. And it mentions the Clark Strand, which is separated from the Casa Loma by a small compressional
Right there.
step. Yeah, in the city of Hemet.
Yeah, we watch this thing jump from here over to there all the time. And Hemet would be, let me get my freeways. Here's Menifee. Hemet's right here. So there's the span here from the Casa Loma Fault and the Springs Fault. You can see there's the adjacent right through the city of San Jacinto right here. Right next to it is Hemet, Eastern Hemet and Western Hemet. And it goes right through. So the valley of San Jacinto is right up here. And in the Clark Fault, and you said the Claremont Fault?
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
And at the end of that, it talks about the 1899 and 1918 San Jacinto quakes. That's, if you look them up, that's what they're listed as.
Would that be considered the Riverside earthquake? Because I often come across people many times over there, and they were saying they always call it the Riverside Creek because San Bernardino's up here, Riverside's right next to it, and that's the San Jacinto area, and the Ramona Expressway, all that, and we see a lot of movement in the San Jacinto Valley down through here, and then it goes all the way to Santa Rosa Hills. Here's the Clark Fault. Turns into the Buck Ridge Fault down here. But this is the area that he's speaking about from right here to right in here. Go ahead. What did you learn about that area?
Well, those are actually the two biggest quakes that they know about right on the San Jacinto section itself. So people that were actually around, and it was recorded on seismos and all that stuff. So started with the 1899 one and then the 1918 one, which they think were both 6.7s.
6.7. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, approximately the same side as Northridge and the Silmar quake. So like the same magnitude, pretty much.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So now I'm going to talk about the Anza segment next.
All right. Anza was a little bit further south. All right.
Which there's really not too much to talk about there. Everybody refers to it now as the Anza Gap.
I definitely do.
Yeah. So you hear everybody talking about the Anza Gap. That's what they're referring to. And so it talks about there the history of it. The 1988 working group is the one that came up with these names. And see, they're saying which faults it included: Clark, Coyote Creek, Buck Hodge Fault. And then the 95 working group changed the length of the segment and made it longer. And based upon the paleoseismic investigation, which is when they do the trench and figure out when the last quake was. So in that, it gives the numbers. So they figured out the last three. So 1210, 1530, and 1750.
Okay. 12, about what, 500 years apart?
No, only 200.
200.
250 it says.
I put in on Twitch here. I'll try to put it on the bottom of Facebook or YouTube or Rumble. The video that talks about the other area of faulting. The video that I keep referring to. I just put it in on Twitch here for everybody. Go ahead.
Yep. So and it says, well, if it's 250 year recurrent rate, 1750 was the last time. So basically, we're due for a bit. Well, it says in there a magnitude of 7.7 to 7.5 on that ends a gap section. So that's pretty interesting. But and then the next segment is the Coyote Creek one, and they figured out the recurrence rate on that.
Coyote Creek. Okay, that's right down here.
Yeah, so they're saying 175 years on that
All
one.
right.
And the last time it went off was in 1892.
1892. Okay.
Yeah, which was, I think, the same year
Creek was all the way down here.
there was a Laguna Salada quake too.
Yeah, 1968 to 1987. I have numbers in here for the Coyote Creek. Ocotillo Wells recreational area. Often we talk about Ocotillo Wells because USGS it talks about that, but they don't say it's on the Coyote Creek fault. They just say Ocotillo Wells, where the kind of location is.
Yeah. And if you read, I'm going to add a little bit else on that because I mentioned 1892 was the same year as there was a Laguna Salada quake in Baja that same year. And it was in the same location as the one we had in 2010, basically. So that's the Laguna Salada fault. But they found out since the Laguna Salada actually connects to the Elsinore. But all this stuff down there right now, if you look at the current maps, they talk about Ocotillo Wells that's the area where these all connect. So they're all close together. Even the Laguna Salada and Elsinore, the San Felipe fault.
Yeah.
And all those ones,
it's all like a whole big junction down here, all kinds of mess.
Yeah. So just to explain that. So, and now the next one is the Borrego Mountain one, which there was actually a quake there.
Borrego Springs.
Yeah. Borrego Mountain quake or whatever they call it in 1968. And it's the same thing, interval of 175 years. Yeah.
So 1968, what size was that one?
I got on my sheet of paper. I gotta look. Borrego. .4.
Pretty good little quake, Southern Cal.
Yeah.
That did some damage. Yeah.
And then the Superstition Hills one, which is the most recent quake that's happened on the San Jacinto that was above 6. And there was actually 2 of them. So it gives the history there of how they named it. But
Superstition Hills, go ahead and explain it. Go ahead and tell us how it got its name.
Yeah. So it talks about this same 1988 working group, and then the 1995 group did it updated or whatever later. And so they said, I'll just read it. Define the segment as 2 parallel strands, the Superstition Hills and the Superstition Mountain faults. They haven't figured out the slip rate at that point in time. That was in 88. And then it says on November 23rd, 1987, the working group determined that the available information was still not adequate to assign 30-year probabilities. So then it talks about on November 24th, 87, the fault ruptured. So that was those Superstition Hill quakes in 87 that we've mentioned previous. And they said that the fault ruptured along with an unknown fault, later named the Elmore Ranch fault. So that's where they got the Elmore Ranch thing.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 quakes, a 6 and then a 6.5.
Right here.
So, yeah. So
what was the first one, the big one, or the second one?
I think the first one was the smaller one, and the second one was the bigger one.
Okay.
So I think it went Superstition Hills and then Elmore Ranch. I think that's how it went.
Yep.
Which they get a lot of quakes down there, and help this map and what you're giving us, Canuck. It's really helpful because we often see a lot of activity in this region, and we don't really know what to do with it. Is it part of the volcano, which is right up in here, or is it, due to fracking, or what are they doing? Pumping the poo-poo down in the ground and creating steam out of the volcano? It's not a stratovolcano, it's a shield volcano. And the history, our first rabbit hole started, and we were talking about the first couple of them. We were talking about the 1800s and how the people used to take ferry boats up the Colorado River all the way up into Needles, California, and further north, and because it didn't have all the dams, and the river was wider, and we didn't suck all the water out. Yeah. But often there's a lot of seismicity here, and there's a lot of volcanics over on the Chocolate Mountains, which is on the other side. A lot of volcanic systems out on this side with this main volcano here, which in California, it is the most active volcano in California, and one of the most dangerous ones, the Brawley seismic zone, or that portion of the San Andreas that moves through Brawley and adjacent to the Elmore Ranch, which I remember when they were talking about the Elmore Ranch, and it's they get pretty good ones down there, and it's funny how you feel them up in the north when they're here, but on the Elsinore you don't feel them in the same way. It's very odd, very odd. The different people on the coast, depending on where you're located, you don't feel them, but if it's on the other fault, you feel them. It was very weird how all these faults and splays are all interconnected. So this area is so important to kind of look at the history. Like, I think you said it goes off about 150 to 200 years. Is that what your estimation is?
Yeah, they're saying now that Superstition Hills segment goes off. Well, it talks there right at the end of it about every 250.
About every 250 years. Now, when they say 250 years, they don't mean a 5. They mean something larger than a 6. Am I correct?
Yeah. They basically mean large. They consider 6 and above.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it talks about the Superstition Mountain section, and based upon their fault studies they've done on that, they think it last one off. It talks about ancient Lake Kauai there, which was the lake that was before Salton Sea, that was in the same area except way bigger. Okay. And it's basically 1440. So they think the last time that had.
The last, what, big 7 or mid 6?
Yeah, like anything above 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so they think 1440 on that section. So 340 years they're guessing. Well, if that's the case, it's way overdue. But
right. And yeah, the Anza Gap does every 250. The Cowda Creek does 175, plus or minus 100 years. Yeah. And the break, or you were talking about the Superstition Mountains, 340 years. Pretty crazy. Superstition Hills are 250 years. So, and we're talking for a large quakes, something that moves the ground significantly to have an offset. And at the Anza Gap.
Well,
go ahead.
I guess my question is these faults that take longer to have a big quake over a 6, is there the different type of ground that it's made of that's keeping it locked longer, or is it just
if you go into it, it's different reasons. It depends on if there's like a bend in the fault or like what they call a step over thing between each segment. Because they say when they go off, sometimes that blocks it. So the rupture stops at where this step over or whatever is. So they talk about that in all sorts of different fault studies. So I imagine it's the same thing here. Now, they say 340. I don't know how they got that, but I just thought about it now. They know the southern San Andreas at Salton Sea went off at 1690. So that would be pretty close to this 340 time period. Because if you add 340 onto 1440, you're in that same time period, like around 1700. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's what they're basing on it, but if the San Andreas went off at near 8 in 1690, see, it would be pretty close to all these segments of San Jacinto that we're talking about. So I don't know if I don't know if that's where they're getting it from. Like, we haven't talked about in detail because they know the last 4 times that the southern San Andreas has gone off, and at Salton Sea section. So 1690 is the most recent one based upon the studies that they've done there anyway. So I thought it was interesting when I saw this 340 year thing, because it would be pretty close to the time period when they think the southern San Andreas, because it's just over on the opposite side, right? Because the San Andreas is on the opposite side of Salton Sea.
Right. Yeah, the Elmore Ranch is a splay 4.1 coming in North Islands of New Zealand. Oh crap! There we go. They have it on this map from ArcGIS, coming from the Superstition Hills Fault, going northeast to southwest. And the last major quake, 1987, was a 6.0 on that same fault. So in a depth of 10. And the activity on that Elmore fault, it's not going to give it to me. God bless America. Yeah, still not going to give it to me. Okay. The Elmore fault zone, Superstition Hills section of it. It's, I don't know, it's historical. What else we have on there? And they're going to tell me anything more. I think the Elmore Ranch fault is really interesting, how it goes out in front of the volcano being here, and it moves all the way across. I want to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yeah, you are. Good. So we've talked about this fault here, which is the Coyote Creek. Slip rate is about 7 millimeters a year. And the slip rate on the Elmore Ranch is about 2.5 millimeters. And the Superstition Hills is about 2.85 millimeters a year. So these ones are much less active than the one, the Coyote Creek, because it moves a hell of a lot more. It includes it goes through Borrego Springs, and then the Clark portion of the San Jacinto, 5.37 millimeters. So this active region right through here, through Borrego Springs, into the area that Canuck's talking about, moves in some ways twice as fast as the others. And then up in the top, the San Jacinto Valley moves at a rate of 10 centimeters or millimeters a year, 10.5. And 8 at the very top, it moves at 8.5 millimeters or 8.4 millimeters a year. And the other site, Lytle Creek, moves at 1.68. So primarily, these two middle sections move pretty darn intensely. And then it gets bogged into all this other stuff. So how these different faults are made, you have the Imperial Fault coming in, and which one's this one? The Cerro Prado Fault, it moves at a 15.3 millimeters a year. pretty darn fast, right? And the Laguna Salada moves only 2.14, which turns into the Elsinore fault. But the Imperial fault moves 15.11 millimeters a year. So it's moving 15 down here. And some of these others are moving 7 and 11. So it's getting bogged down at least 3 millimeters a year in this region. And that's why I think it's the most active portion of the 3 main faults that are in this area, because it's just being jumbled and crunched, and the compression is all in here. And the compressional part of the San Andreas goes from up here at Garlock, or just north of Garlock, all the way down to the edge of I think it's all the way down here, past the San Jacinto fault. From my understanding, I think it starts right here on the Pinto Mountain fault, that crosses over just like the Garlock fault does. They're east to west or west to east faults, and it's where the compressional point is. And it's interesting how big portions of it moves super fast, not so fast. I mean, the San Andreas moving at 17, so it's sliding by all these other ones pretty quick. I mean, the Elsinore 2.3, they're not that fast, and is this other one here, Earthquake Valley 1.74. So the San Jacinto fault is super active, but not quite as active as the San Andreas. However, we see a hell of a lot more earthquakes on the San Jacinto fault. Like if I just did a 1 day look at the San Jacinto, all the faults, you can see just how many earthquakes are here versus along the San Andreas. Yet the San Andreas is moving faster because it breaks all the way down into the lithosphere versus this one doesn't. It's just getting as one slide. It's like old person, wrinkles, right? These are the wrinkles of the greater San Andreas system. And so it's super active. I mean, if I did the 30 days, it would show you more.
Yeah. Well, I think what they said when I read a bunch of this stuff before is they think 80% of it goes on San Andreas, and the other 20% is San Jacinto, and all the other ones going out to the west, way off the coast.
But the evidence is showing that the San Jacinto right now is way more active than the same segment or adjacent segment of the San Andreas.
Here I'm going to explain why I think that is. I think because the San Jacinto is closer to where the Imperial fault is. It's coming up the Imperial fault. Now, some other times it comes up on the San Andreas and goes around on the other side, but it's not as often. And I think that's also why that segment, the southern San Andreas segment, is a way longer rate between when it goes big, because it's kind of bypassing going right up the San Jacinto. So the San Jacinto seems to be way more active than that southern San Andreas.
We can see the San Jacinto Valley. We can see the hot springs or the Anza right through here, right? Borrego Springs. And then, the, what was the other one? Cayuga Creek. No, I don't know. Cayuga Creek and Superstition Hills. You can see the Superstition Hills not so active, but except for this segment of it down here below Brawley, and we can see down here Superstition and below Brawley, right? This Imperial fault, and there are dates here that show where all these different earthquakes are happening. and on each of these faults. But it's interesting. Go back into the 30 days. This is just the 30 days. Massive amount of earthquakes along the San Jacinto. Not so much on the San Andreas, except for this portion of it, which is the Imperial, like you said. And then the conjunction of those faults and where the San Jacinto crashes into it right up in here. And I think the other days we were talking about the Banning area and Rancho Cucamonga and the Crafton Hills and the Banning fault system and the Rialto. We were talking about all these little Glen Helen and Lytle Creek, all these different faults right here. And you can see, wait, let me show you here. Show you this tab. You can see right through here on these faults right here. This is the area of everything crunching, which is the northern section of the San Jacinto fault. And this is just looking at it in real time. You can see how much activity right here. They got Lytle Creek up here. You got Cucamonga right through here. But this section right through here, through Moreno Valley, Banning, Beaumont, Yucaipa, and you got Idaho. This is the valley and that he was talking about. And we share this back again. And you'll see it's the Crafton Hills. That was the southern portion of that northern end of the San Jacinto fault, the segment. Remember how he broke them down into segments? And that moves at 10.64 portion in that segment, 10.64. The segment below moves at 11.73. So while the San Andreas moves up there 10.36. So it moves super fast down here, yet it's transferring all that energy onto the San Jacinto, and it's moving quicker than it does the San Andreas does right through here. This section of San Andreas doesn't move as fast as the San Jacinto does right through here. And it seems that they're playing with each other. The San Jacinto right here and the San Andreas right through here.
Okay.
There you go, bud.
Yeah, so now the next section in the same article talks about the Anza seismic gap again.
Okay, back down here.
Yeah, very popular. So it basically explains in this little blurb, they're saying why they think it can go 6.5 to 7.5.
Wow.
So, yeah, so they're saying if Anza Gap plus the other two, Coyote Creek and Superstition Mountain.
Yep. That's this one.
Yeah, because they haven't gone off in the longest time, right?
Right.
Those three. So they're saying if all three of those or two out of the three went off together, it would make a 7 to 7.5. So that's what they talk about in the little section that's in that.
Yeah, 1954 is the last time it looks like the San Jacinto in that area is gone. 1890 was another time, a 6.8. Whew. 6.8. Whew.
I couldn't find too much info in 1890. So I basically started with 1899 and then
right,
because those are the ones everybody pretty much agrees on.
Yeah, the 1891. Yeah,
1899 one coming up. And so the next section there I want to talk about is they talk about the link to San Andreas Fault again.
Okay.
So that's basically the 1812 stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. So they don't say that in this section.
Are they talking about the Elmore Ranch connection, or
they're giving examples of how they think it's connected?
The extra fault. Okay.
But they haven't put the information in there about the 1812 thing because that was 2016 was the first study came on that, and there's been multiple since then that come out. since then, saying that those two faults both went off together, and the last time was 1812, but they've done it back 2,000 years, and they've gone off together in what did I say? Four times. Yeah, 4 times in 2,000 years. So the occurrence rate is 500.
So 500 years on average. The southern portion of the Elsinore, not Elsinore, but the San Jacinto and San Andreas pop, which is basically the Brawley area. Brawley's right here. This section right here he's talking about. And yes, the Clark Fault, the Superstition Hills Fault, the Coyote Creek Fault, that all go through the Anza Gap is right through here.
And they base that on the study they did in 2018. They did one up in the Cajon Pass area, and that's what it's all based upon. So they figured out the last 4 times that whole part with the San Andreas, because they have studies for the San Andreas, that they both went off together. Because it's where the Cajon Pass connects to the San Andreas.
Correct.
It's super important. So I've been kind of focusing on that, because when I have done the recreations of where the quakes come from, Cajon Pass always has a notable quake that people feel before all these other ones happen. But I'll get to that when we get.
And that's still a 6.0 and over.
Yeah. So something happens up at Cajon Pass before all these other bigger quakes happen on San Jacinto, or also the ones that go east to west across to Santa Monica and out that way. Because I found it every single time, every single one I've looked up, and I've gone all the way back now to, what year was it? 1827. But I had to go look at San Francisco quakes and reconstruct them all and bring them all down, because I've been actually studying all the San Francisco quakes, and I added in all the Haida Gwaii ones and all the Alaska ones that I know about. But anyway, that's a whole segment.
Are you seeing a pattern on that though, Canuck?
It's consistent every time. The bigger the quake, the okay, I'm going to give an example, because I'm going here to 1899 next. That's what I'm going to start with for San Jacinto quakes. So okay. A while back, I started looking up San Jacinto quakes. So I got them all and I wrote them all down, all the ones that were above 6 since 1900. And I actually have a list with all the dates, which I'll read them off eventually. But, well, actually, I probably should do it now, just to give you an idea, like when they were, and then I'll start. Because in this Wikipedia article, it talks about 4 of them, but there's actually been 6 of them that are above 6. So what I do, when it's easier for me to find the information when they're above 6, and the farther it goes back, it's harder to find stuff. But I've learned that I can still find it. I just have to dig more. But anyway, so I'm going to list them off now. We just talked about 1812, but I'm not going to worry about that.
What was the location of 1812? Do you know?
Well, it's all based upon fault studies and computer models, and it's based upon how the rocks and the trees broke, and because they have like the tree ring studies and all sorts of different stuff, and they found that the trees broke both on San Andreas and San Jacinto at the same time. So it was all at the same time, so it wasn't like two different dates, which was
right. That their best guess is they went the same time.
Yeah, so
because the way the trees were broken,
yeah, and all that. So that was December 8th, 1812, and we've talked about that before.
Now, did that happen in the northern section of the San Jacinto?
Yeah, because they think
it's a home pass area. All right.
Yeah, they think it was both San Andreas and San Jacinto going, and that's the one where the Santa Barbara quake was 2 weeks after, and of course 1812 is the same year as the New Madrid quakes, the Venezuela quake, and when La Soufriere went via VEI level 4, because we talked about that before. I don't want to get into that now. That actually could probably be its own separate 2-hour thing, really. But because I found new stuff since I've been reading about all the San Francisco quakes, because there actually was a San Francisco quake in early 1812 that made a tsunami in San Francisco Bay. But I'm not going to get into that now, or we'll get way off track. So, because I've been reading anything I can find on San Fran lately, and also Santa Barbara, because they have records going way back. It's in one of their libraries, and it's taken from all the newspaper articles. Same as the stuff in San Francisco. So what I'm doing now, I've found out I got to find all these obscure databases that are wherever, and it will tell me the exact dates and times that quakes were felt, and they list the damage. And some of them don't have magnitudes, so they don't have it converted to a magnitude, but they'll say whatever the equivalent seismic shaking scale was back then. So it'll be like it's in the Roman numeral thing. So it's like shaking 7, 8.
Who needs an AI when we have Canuck?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all that right now, but I'm going to list off all the quakes that were on San Jacinto since 1900 that were above 6, because that's stuff I can find information super easy for. So, or easier, I should say. So the first one that they know that was instrumentally recorded and people were there to experience it or witness it or whatever on the San Jacinto Fault was Christmas Day, 1899.
And the northern section or the what section?
Well, I think it's the San Jacinto section. So San Bernardino.
All right, the Riverside area.
Yeah, the Riverside area, whatever you want to call it. So it was in that section, and it was a 6.7. So you know what I like to do when I get a quake date? You know what I do? I take the date of that quake and I work backwards a year to see what I can find. So the first thing I did when I started going back, because I started right close to it, because in 1899, I can't go into Wikipedia and see them all listed. That only in detail, that starts at 1900. They start listing it by all the months and everything. Now, as soon as you hit 1899, you got to dig in a different way and use different ways to get it.
Different techniques, yeah.
Yeah. So this is what he did. So I started looking up. I said, well, I'm going to see. I already knew other quakes that happened in 1899. So the first one I thought of, I said, oh, 1899. That's exciting. Well, that was the same year as all the Yakutat quakes. 1899, all the Yakutat Alaska quakes, which there actually was 4 when I actually dug into it, that were all like high 7s to near 8. And they were started September 4th, I think it was, of 1899.
How long of a time span did that start from the beginning to end in Yakutat?
It went on multiple days, and it was all in September. So they kind of debate which one was the original quake, and they say, well, whatever the biggest one, the others were aftershocks to it. But anyway, so when I got digging into that, I started looking up other things like information for Alaska, and then I found out there was 2 gigantic Gulf of Alaska, like high 7s, they think, that same year, earlier that year. So they think like more towards the start of that year. So like the first part of the year. They're not really quite sure on the exact dates because there wasn't a whole lot of people up there then. They felt them, but they don't really know exactly what the mags were to the ones that were in the Gulf of Alaska because they were farther offshore. So this was at the start of the year of 1899. So say spring or around that time. And then so I started looking up more stuff, see what I could find on 1899 because I kind of know how this works. So I went all the way back to the start of the year. And then I said, oh, well, this is interesting. There was a gigantic quake in Guerrero, Mexico. They debate on which date it was. They even think that it may have been 2 quakes. So kind of like what happened in 2017 with the two quakes close together. So
Right.
they debate if the quake was on January 24th or on January 28th, 1899. And the debate is, if you look at the official thing, they say, if you look at the official Mexico thing, they say it was a 7.5 on the 24th. But then I found a whole bunch of other things that said it was on June 28th. And if there was two, they were both high sevens. Or they also say, I found other stuff that said it could have been possibly one, and it was 8.4 with aftershocks. So, and they felt it in Mexico City. So basically, this quake in 1899 that was in Guerrero, because they call it a Guerrero quake. So it was like around Guerrero offshore, but they felt it big time in Mexico City. They said it was very similar to like what happened with the 1985 Mexico City quake. It just, there wasn't as many people there in 1899 as what there's now. So I thought that was super interesting, because the 1985 Mexico City quake was in September 1985, around the same time of year. Their September 19th thing that they always freak out about, which is like tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
Yeah. So anyway, so about that, because when I looked this up before, I was trying to figure out like how all that stuff happened in 86 and 87 from before. And then I realized, oh crap, the big Mexico City quake was right down there within a year of the California quakes in 86 in SoCal, and also the 87 ones, both Whittier and Superstition Hills. And then I also knew from my previous studies from before, 86 and 87 had massive Gulf of Alaska quakes that were like high sevens, eights, or near 8. So
basically what you're doing is you're drawing a picture that we can see evidence along the entire coast of the North American and Pacific Plate junction, or the way it's sliding next to each other, from Alaska all the way down to Mexico, that there is some sort of connection. Now, it's not an instantaneous connection, but it's a connection within a year or so, and where one portion of the segment, the entire, I don't know what you call it. We'll call it a liniment, the Walker Lane liniment, because that's what we generally call it.
Basically Walker Lane.
Right. What we call the Walker Lane from Alaska, the Gulf of Alaska, all the way down into southern Mexico. What is it? Acapulco. From there all the way north to, what would you say up in the Gulf there? Would it be the Yakutat, or would it be Anchorage?
Well, it would be Kodiak Island over.
Okay.
And then Yakutat down.
So when just the other day when Haida Gwaii got the 6.5.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that. But
I know you will. I know. So when Haida Gwaii went 6.5, I'm on alert to watch the entire Walker Lane, because we've noticed this. We've made the same conclusions. That's why specifically I'm looking for Ferndale. Generally, Ferndale kind of goes after Haida Gwaii as well. However, it doesn't mean it doesn't skip it. It just means it's a place of interest. It's not a forecast or anything like that. But I'm sure, Canuck, you're going to get into it. But go ahead. What's your observations in generally what you're saying?
Yeah, so I was talking about the Mexico quake. So that was end of January. So either January 24, 28. So in that range in 1899. So start of the year. So then I started looking up other stuff, and I go, oh, I'm going to look at some San Fran stuff and see what I can find out. So this is when I started digging into all the San Fran stuff.
Well, there's definitely earthquakes in 1899 in San Fran.
Yeah. And so I found out there was a NorCal, they think, off coast. And it was on June 1st, 1899. They felt it in San Francisco, but they felt it more because there was some people up farther up more in North Cali. So they think it was between 6.4 and 6.8 based upon
Right.
the reports.
Did a
on
lot
it.
of damage.
Yeah. So it was on June 1st, 1899.
Somewhere up here in the Marin County, quite possibly.
Yep. And then remember that article that I got you to read that other time
Mm-hmm.
when we were talking about the fires and stuff? Because I found more information about that too since.
All right.
So I'm gonna tell you some other stuff. So in that article, it talks about an earlier quake that everybody felt that same year before the San Jacinto one on Christmas Day. So the other one that everybody felt in California was what they actually call it is the Cajon Pass quake of 1899.
Is that Cajon or Cajon?
Cajon. So it's
Cajon.
up,
Okay, that's the area that we're talking about down here.
yeah, and it was on July 22nd, 1819. So this is like,
A month later?
yeah, like a little bit over a month after the NorCal one. So I thought that was interesting because I've seen this about.
Yeah, see, geologic time is not the same time as us. We're used to microwave time, so we want it instantaneous. But that's why we kind of say nobody can forecast it. But what we can do is we say this is a place of interest. We're going to watch what's going on. Even the small quakes in the areas that we're watching. I've seen Ferndale get a little active lately, and I'm still kind of watching it, seeing if there's anything new going to happen there.
And this 1899 Cajon Pass quake, they estimate 5.7 with a question mark. And when I looked it up, they said the question mark because it's based upon how far they felt it, because they felt it all the way out way past Malibu and basically all the way down the San Jacinto Fault. So that's why they have the question mark, because they're not sure, because they don't know exactly where it was, but based upon how it was felt, it might be bigger than 5.7. So
Right. So they felt it from where to where?
They felt it all the way out Malibu, Santa Monica way, that way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So all the way out west.
Uh-huh.
And
then what was the other way?
All the way down the San Jacinto Fault, basically.
So they felt it down in El Centro or
yeah, basically.
Where?
I'd have to look up.
Okay. I just want to see the spread, how far.
Well, it's listed. You have to, when you search it, because I didn't bring it up here. It's 1899 Cajon Pass, and it's under the Southern California SCEC thing. That has all the information on it. Right. So it says how far they felt it and all that stuff.
All right. The quake was reported the most of Southern California intense, reaching level 8, level 9, a Rossi intensity scale, basically earlier version of the modified mercantile scale, or Mercalli scale, essentially, which somewhere near Lytle Creek and Cajon Pass, landslides triggered and blocked both the Lytle Creek Canyon Road all the way through the Cajon Pass. The heaviest damage buildings occurred in San Bernardino, Highland, and Patton. Damage was also reported in Redlands, Pomona, Riverside, Pasadena, and Los Angeles, though it was mostly minor. No deaths reported. All right, so we got right up in here is Lytle. Let me show this instead. Right up in here is Lytle Creek Canyon and the Cajon Pass, and Highland and Patton, which is down through here. Redlands and Pomona, which again is right down here, and Pomona's over here. There's Pomona. So look at this. Over here, Redlands and Pomona. There's an eastern and even east-northeast of the. So there very well could have been on the Santa Maria Fault. But right lateral strike slip. So interesting. Right up in here, the Cajon Pass. It was I'm seeing what's the date on this one? 1899, considered magnitude 5.7.
Yeah.
according to SCEDC, Southern California Earthquake Data Center. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that article that you read part of whenever we were reading about 1899 before, that one that I sent you in that article also talks about a gigantic wildfire that was in September of 1899, and they actually call it the San Gabriel Mountains
And Gabriel Mountains
wildfire. So I found more information about it since, because there's
Okay.
a guy, since the bridge fire happened, there's people that have been checking out the history of that area and the fires. And so when I looked up the other information, they said that it started at the bottom of the San Gabriel Mountains and burned up.
Right. Where do you know where at?
It started in the same canyon as what the bridge fire did. But,
really?
Yeah, but this one was way worse because it burned up basically everything. The guy that did the recent research on it, it was an X thing I found. And he said back then in 1899, he said he thinks it was either that fire or there was other ones that combined or something. But he said in that area, he said it burnt 750,000 acres of trees.
Wow. So basically, Glendora, Azusa started and went up on the canyon, the one that's happening right now, went over the hill, over the Wrightwood, and out through Baldy Mesa out here. It hasn't gone over the 15 the last I heard. But
if that was like 750,000 acres, it burned a whole crap load of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Because there would have been way more trees back then, too, than what there is now. So,
yeah,
so I thought that was interesting. So that was.
So right now, this is the bridge fire. Started right here, Azusa, Glendora, went up and over the hills. He's talking about major fire, probably what's going on here, because it's 99. You said.
Yeah, 1899. So.
Yeah.
They had the information and what this guy found that's researching all the historical wildfires in California and certain spots. So he said it started on September 3rd. So it's like almost identical to the same time period of the years what we just had. So I thought that was super interesting. So anyway, so that was September and it kept burning like until it went out. Whenever it started.
Yeah, they didn't have many firemen out there.
Yeah. So I thought that was super interesting.
Just a little interesting tidbit.
Yeah.
That 750,000 acres, that would be a mile wide, just shy of 1,200 miles long. If that fire was a mile wide, 750,000 acres would be just about 1,200 miles long.
You know what? The current bridge fire is 54,000 acres.
Yeah.
You're talking 700. The entire mountain lit up.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that would make sense because all these big quakes were happening.
Right.
So,
are they around the same date?
Yeah. Well, the
same year, but what about the same date? Are they semi-close?
Well, they're all within the same year, right? Now,
but did the quake happen before the fire started, or did the fire start and then the quake?
It was before, so it was in September.
Okay.
At the same time that all the Yakutat quakes were happening, because they were all in September too, up in Alaska. So
okay, and you're talking about the fire, not the earthquakes.
Yeah, the fire was in September.
Okay.
And the Yakutat quakes up in Alaska were in
September, and then this one here, July 22. This quake happened in July 22. All right. Yeah. So this quake, I mean, it takes a hell of a long time to burn 750,000 acres.
Yeah, but they say it started on September 3rd and it burned until whenever the rain and snow stopped it. That's basically what they say.
Yeah, I'm serious. The whole, 750,000. That's the entire Angeles National Forest.
Well,
And,
I don't know.
I mean,
I assume that's
massive.
what it was because they weren't doing anything to try and stop it back then.
Well, the
right?
bridge fire is
Chemical.
54,000, and it's huge.
Yeah.
So 750 would be this whole mountain range, the San
Well,
Gabriels.
Probably what it did, right?
Yeah.
If you weren't doing anything to stop it, it would keep going as long as it goes, right?
Well, I don't
Well,
know.
like I said, if the fire was a mile wide, it was just about 1,200 miles long.
Yeah, I think it burned the whole damn thing down. You can see from Santa Clarita all the way out here. I bet you that's what it burnt. Crazy amount of fire. Holy smokes. No pun intended.
Yeah, and so the actual San Jacinto quake, 6.7, was on Christmas Day, 1899.
5.7, I have it here. So they downgraded it.
No,
Oh
well,
my
it says, the San Jacinto quake on December 25th, 1899.
Oh,
6.7.
I'm looking at July 22, 1899. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's the one we were just talking about. Cajon
Yeah, that's
Pass.
that's a 5.7.
Yeah, but that's not the San Jacinto one. The San Jacinto big quake was in December. So see, this is what I'm all. See, I went backwards and recreated how it got to that point. So there's a shitload of stuff that was happening in 1899.
No doubt.
Before San Jacinto one had it 6.7.
Man, it's.
So we're almost 2 hours right now, and I'm just to the end of 1899.
We're an hour and 26.
Yeah.
We started a little bit early. We had a little hiccup, so we didn't count that.
So that's the 1899 story, and I just did from Mexico, Alaska.
Okay, and you're talking. You said Guerrero, Mexico, which is down here.
Yep.
I want to say Guerrero is. I don't know. Yeah, Guerrero is Acapulco. That's what I thought. So they had a big quake down here that shook Mexico City. And we just had an Acapulco quake, last year? A 7?
Well, it was the year before the Colima, I think.
No, last year we just had an Acapulco quake of a 7 that shook Mexico City.
No, I thought the Acapulco one was before Colima.
I'm talking about this last year, not back then.
No, I'm talking about the last couple of years because Colima was 2022. I thought Acapulco was the year before.
I didn't know Colima. When did Colima rock and roll?
Colima was the 2022 one.
Guerrero 2021, 7 point. Wow, time flies, dude.
I know because I have them all memorized pretty much.
Okay.
Was that the 7.4?
It's 7.1. Yeah, it's 7.0.
No, there was a Oaxaca one in 2020.
That's down here. That's down here.
That was in 2020 because it was right after Ridgecrest. Then
1941 Colima.
2021 was Acapulco. 2022.
Colima had 2003. I don't see a.
2022 was Colima 7.67, whatever it was.
Oh, you're talking about the 7.6. I think that was Oaxaca, dude.
No.
I think Oaxaca had one last year, didn't they?
Yeah, but I'm talking about 7 pluses.
Right.
Yep.
So the last
Sorry, it was the Michoacan, Mexico, which is just up the coast. It's not quite Colima, so you probably would see that. Here's Guerrero, Michoacan. Where the hell is Michoacan? I think it's right here.
Yeah, but if you look it up, they still call it Jalisco.
Yeah, Michoacan is right here, right next to Colima. Yeah. So I can see how you thought that. Yeah. That was a 7.6. It was right here on that point. Here's Colima right here. We look for Colima volcano, everybody. That's why we when Colima is mentioned, Manzanillo, we think about Colima volcano. which is right there. But this 7.6 hit right here when the other two 7.6s hit in 22.
So when
okay,
you look
yeah.
up this 1899 Mexico quake, they listed under Guerrero, but
Okay, which
there's
is
a big
south.
there's a big debate on if it was one big quake or two big quakes, because they have two dates for it, January 24th and 28th of 1899, and
Okay.
the majority of the Mexican whatever seismology people say it was like the 24th and it was 7.5. But when I went in and read all the multiple studies on it, there was other people that said it was 8.4 or that it was
Mhm.
two massive 7 quakes.
Right.
So
What was the consensus that you drew a conclusion on? Did some people were dead set to say one date and the other people were saying another date, or
well, it just depends on who is
depends
doing
on the
study.
source, right? The source.
Yeah, but what it reminds me of is the same thing that happened in 2017 with the two big quakes down there close together. Because
Right.
that happened 2017, where there was two big quakes after the massive solar flare and
Mhm.
and and geomagnetic storm.
And I can't believe 21 was when that thing happened.
Yeah, that's how far time flies by. But
Wow.
if I wasn't like looking at this like all the time,
21 and 22. So 21 had happened down here, 22 had happened there. Moving on up.
yeah, because technically we've not had anything between the Sand Point big ones
Right.
in 2021 all the way down to
To mutual
Colima.
con.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kalima, yeah.
So there's been nothing above 6.5 in that
In that
whole
range.
section from
What
Sand
about
Point.
what about off Baja? Have we did get anything off Baja?
We've had sixes, like around a 6, so high 5, 6, but there hasn't been anything 6.5 or above since then.
6.2, yeah, 6.3.
Now you could say that the one that just happened at Haida Gwaii is because they said 6.5.
Yeah, that was 6.5, yeah. And I don't know the Canadians, which I know you're a Canadian. They still call it a 6.5 off of Bella Bella. But it's definitely Haida Gwaii. The 6.2 in November 22 of 22. So interesting that we have the Acapulco 7, the 7.6 here in Mutual Con, real next to Colima. And then up in the middle, we had a 6.2 from Las Brisas in Baja. I don't know where Las Brisas is, but I'm assuming it's right up here in where the areas that we watch. Southwest, southwest of 12 miles. Yeah, okay. I think there was one off of this side too, wasn't there? Let me go back and get down here for you. Trying to, basically recreate some of this. I thought there was something out here that happened. I thought it was, somewhere between in this central section of Sonora. Tuesday, geology. I don't see. Governor Marina del Pilar said on Twitter. Las Brisas in Baja California. I don't know where the hell that is. It might be up in here. I'm doing the research as I talk to you. Baja, yeah, got it. Let me see. Zooming on out. Okay, yeah. North of it. Right up here, just south of Ensenada. So Las Brisas right out here had a 6.2. And that's 6.3 off the coast of Baja. Happened, What's the date on this one? Oh, 2018. Don't worry about that one. Yeah, okay. That's it.
Okay.
2020. Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do next, back to San Jacinto, I'm gonna we did
We
just
still
did,
1899. 1899 is done.
yeah, 1899 is
All right.
done right now.
1892 Laguna Salada had a 7.3, by the way.
Yeah, that
1892.
was the same year as what we were talking about. The other one there
Yeah.
that was 1892. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about that right now.
Okay, that's fine.
So back to San Jacinto quakes. What I'm going to do, I'm going to list the other ones and the dates of them,
Okay.
because you're going to, and for this part that I'm doing, I want you to notice what the dates are, because it's pretty interesting.
Okay.
So, well, the one we just did was December 25th, 1899, and they refer to that one as the 1899 San Jacinto quake when you look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now the next one that was above 6 on the San Jacinto was April 21st, 1918. And they also refer to that one as San Jacinto because it was basically in the same, so they call it the 1918 San Jacinto quake, but it's basically in the same spot as the 1899 one, same area.
I think we call it the Riverside quake. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so they say it was 6.7, so same size as the 1899 one.
Okay.
Yeah, so now the next one that happened on the San Jacinto that was a 6 was July 11th, 1923. And they call this one, and it was a 6.3, and they call it the North San Jacinto quake. So that's what it's listed under.
El Cajon. Okay.
Yeah, when you look it up.
All right.
And then the next one after that was on March 19th, 1954. They also refer to that one as the San Jacinto quake in 1954, or they call it the Arroyo Salada quake.
So that's in the south.
Yeah. So in
Yeah, Aurora Salada's down here.
yeah,
I believe.
So that was March 19th, 1954, and they say it was a 6.4.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next one that was above 6 was April 9, 1968, which was the Borrego Mountain one. So that's what they refer to it as.
April what?
April 9th, 1968. 6.6 Borrego Mountain.
Okay. What was the 54 quake? What was the size?
6.4.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And now the other one we've already mentioned already and talked about it already was November 24, 1987, which is Superstition Hills and Elmore Ranch, 6 and 6.5. So if you update it to right now, it's been 37 years since there was a 6+ on the San Jacinto.
Okay.
Yep. Now, if you look back at all those dates, I didn't realize it till I was looking at all the dates of them after when I looked it down, but every one of them is within like a month of solstice. Either right close to it or maximum a month out from whatever the solstice date was that year.
Well, September 19th, right? September 19th. That's the Mexico one. The solstice is the peak of summer, right?
Well, the solstice is every time the seasons change. So
21, 19.
yeah. If you look, December 25.
What the 1899? What's the date on that one?
December 25.
December 25.
So Christmas Day, well, that's right when it switches to winter, December whatever,
21, yeah. Always on the 21 or 22.
Yeah. April the next one in 1918 was April
Oh,
21.
first day of spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the 1923 one was July 11th. So it switches to summer, end of June. So it's all within the same range.
Well, yeah, it's a week away. Yeah.
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 In 54, it was March 19th. So right around spring. In 1968, it was April 9th. So same thing again, right around when it switches to spring in March. And then the last one, the Superstition
Within
Hills
2
one,
weeks.
was November 24th. So that's pretty close, within a month of December 21st, 22nd, which is when winter starts. So I thought that was super interesting. And it applies to the 1812 quake too, because it was in December 8th. So when I look back, I said, well, that's odd. Everyone is like happened right around solstice time. So I said, for San Jacinto, you better be looking around solstice time, because that's when it tends to go big. So I thought that was interesting. So that was my observation from those once I wrote them all down.
Yeah, seasonal changes. The weather changes. Think about that. I mean, some of these aren't exactly on the 21, but who cares? But the weather changes. You know, we do, or I don't. I'm right there anymore. It's gotten really cold here now, comparatively. When you're 112 and all of a sudden now you're at 50, it's like a big difference. But in Southern Cal, it does get quite chilly in those mountains, and that's pretty interesting. You get up in these mountains. The weather seems to change. Oh, sometimes September, and the fires start. It's kind of odd because it gets super dry in September, October, and the fires start, and then the temperature just like goes off the cliff. It just drops, and it gets cold, and it can get freezing up in those mountains. So, and we know, generally speaking, our earthquake weather down in Southern Cal primarily happens when the air is crisp. It's kind of odd. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it happens when it's crisp. There are other quakes that are different anomalies, but just my experience is that when it's cold, watch out. And
so now I'm going to simplify it even more, because I
go
just
right ahead.
looked at it. So there was 3 in winter, 2 in spring, and 2 in summer out of those 7 that I mentioned.
All right. Yeah.
So that's interesting too.
The December 8, 1812, that was a
San Jacinto and San Andreas together.
7.9. Yeah.
Which we already know what happened that year, because
we've covered it.
Yeah. And I also found out in reading about this new San Francisco stuff, because I found a study that was on the 1906 quake, but inside the study it went back and talked about every single quake that was like super noticeable in San Fran, and they went way back. And one of the things they mentioned was 1812, and they don't know the date. They just know it was early that year. They haven't figured out a date for it, but they said there was a notable quake that damaged the mission that was in San Francisco, made stuff fall down, wrecked all sorts of stuff. And there was a tsunami in San Francisco Bay.
Well,
so I find that super interesting, because I hadn't found that before I did all my other 1812 stuff. So apparently there was a big quake up by San Fran and a tsunami that came in the bay. It wasn't like super big. Probably the same idea as what Santa Barbara was, which was later on that year. So apparently it was quaking all out up along that. And when I started digging into it more, because it was both San Francisco information that they had there at their museum library thing, and also at Santa Barbara, they said that there was massive foreshocks to all the stuff in 1812 that actually started on May 1st. Like there was all these felt quakes that the people in Santa Barbara all the way across to San Juan Capistrano and all that, they were feeling all these quakes that were felt ones, so they assumed probably 4s at least, big enough that they could feel them.
Correct.
And it was like constantly foreshocking, like pretty much every day, at least once. In all this information I was reading, they said it went maybe 4 days without them feeling a shake between May 1st and December 8th. So there's all this crazy stuff that was happening there with foreshocks, like all that section between Santa Barbara all the way over into San Juan Capistrano, because it lists them by the missions, right? And
Yes.
I thought that was super crazy. So there was all these foreshocks that people were feeling before San Jacinto and San Andreas went off on December 8th. And then, of course, you had the big Santa Barbara quake on December 21st, 1812. And I because I found those lists now, I've looked back at different years, and I found out from looking at the different ones that there's always a lead up. They're always feeling all these quakes before you get the real big ones like Owens Valley or whatever. So people are feeling all these quakes. And like it lists them by year and by date when they felt them, and they say this is a sharp shock, or we felt this here and it damaged this here or whatever, and it lists them all in the San Francisco. It's at the museum library thing. They have all this stuff, and then I found out Santa Barbara has one too, and there's one now for LA that somebody did. What year was it? 2014. I don't know if it's she or he, but they've been updating every year since. So they add all these other quakes in. They were just doing LA basin quakes. And whoever this person is that's done it, she lists like all the information about everyone. She has the date, what it's called, where they felt it. So now I can see all these and go way back in time, because now I'm coordinating them with all the ones that I found out that happened out in Santa Monica and Malibu and all those places before. So I don't know what all these idiots are talking about at the USGS. It makes no sense, because they keep saying this hasn't happened before, even though it's been happening for 200 years. Because I went and found all. So apparently they're not looking at whatever all this information that's in the libraries, because I don't understand what they're talking about. And it's doing the same thing over and over again every time, or they're just not telling people. And it's driving me up the wall, because
it drives me bananas too. And I refrain from calling the USGS USBS, but it is.
Well, I don't know what they're doing.
frustrating.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Agreed. And that's what lends to the problem that we have with the USGS. Not that we are wanting to disrespect them, but it's like, hey, a layman such as us can go and do the research, and we can see, hey, wait a minute, we put this together. Why can't you? I'm not talking about forecasting, because we're not forecasting, but what we're saying is there seems to be some sort of connection where indirectly or directly over a short period of time.
Yeah, it's like no quake comes out of nowhere, so I don't know where they're getting that from. They're
not necessarily random.
Right out the line. It's just people.
Well, if you can get a repeating pattern.
Yeah, people aren't paying attention, or they're just willfully ignorant. I don't know which one it is.
Well, I think
somebody's writing all this stuff down somewhere, but not everybody's looking at it. They're just ignoring it, which it doesn't make any sense to me. Because all this stuff here, some of them they've gone back if they're big enough, and they've studied them and reassigned magnitudes to them, but they only really care about the ones that are like 6 or above, right? They don't care about the ones that are 5 or 4, and all the people are back in the olden days are all reporting about feeling, because they were writing down. They said this was at 6:45 a.m. on April 21st, 1827. So So they're actually writing all these things down, and they felt a quake, and they either went and saw the damage, or their next door neighbor or whoever came along there said, "Oh yeah, the whole stuff fell down over out around here." And so that's all in all these, I assume, newspaper articles and stuff that, like, the missions, Spanish missions people were writing down, because how else would they get all this information? So I don't know what they're talking about, that all these things are random, because they're not random. Because you can see this over and over, like, once you actually look at all the information. And this is what I don't understand.
I want to challenge ourselves into saying, are we reading more into it than we should? Do you know what I'm saying? Just to check ourselves. Because I mean, I'm told that there is a historical evidence and of a repetitive process that is continue. When one part grows, the other part goes in a relatively short period of time, short geologic period of time. And I want to make sure that we are careful by saying, "Oh, this is rock solid, and this is what happens, and this goes, and then that goes." So, because then what will happen is somebody will take our information and then go and say, "Well, it's going to happen," and they said it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's what we're after. I think what we're saying is there appears to be a mechanism that is, these faults are interrelated, rather directly or indirectly. And in geologic time, we can see a pattern persist over the couple hundred years. See, when this happens, that happens. And this other event, such as really kind of far out, like the forest fires, they're happening during this time period as well. So it's like, hey, what's going on?
Well, when I do this, I'm doing a year, basically.
I do a year before and a year after. Yeah. And that's why I can see what you're saying, and I have the same conclusions. And our observation,
Yep.
I don't want to lead us astray or lead
it's just that they're not correlating all these things because they've decided they say, well, all this stuff, one doesn't have anything to do with the other.
Right.
That's basically what it is. Even though from all the stuff I've done so far, which I couldn't even tell you how many it is now.
Yes, sir.
I keep finding the same things over and over. Like, I couldn't even tell you now. I don't even know how many I've done. Because, like, every time I do this, it's warping in. Because then I keep connecting all these other ones that I find that are the same year. I'll find other things that relate to it in that same year, and it's all happening all around the same time, all within. Right. Sometimes it's super close. Sometimes it's like within a month of the big whatever happened, whatever one I'm looking at, or it could be 2 months before or whatever. Because now from the Haida Gwaii ones, the bigger, because I've been doing Haida Gwaii recently too.
Right.
The stuff, the stuff, the east-west faults in that we just talked about in the last rabbit hole. Right. They respond to Haida Gwaii anywhere. If it's
it's like a shear motion, huh? Yeah, I see what you.
Yeah.
I have on screen the magnitude 7.8 simulation from up to San Andreas, and is from down south El Centro all the way up through Los Angeles into Bakersfield. And this is a minute and 34 long, and I think this is where we'll end it. And watch what happens to the other faults and the intensities. This is from a supercomputer, San Diego Supercomputer Center. Okay.
Hey, Joe, you might want to share it on JSL too.
Is it coming up?
Hold on here.
JSL.
It is not coming up on JSL. Hold on. Here we go. All right. All right, here we go. Watch what this happens. A minute long. See, it starts right there, just north of Brawley. Brawley's down in the south. This is on the San Andreas. Watch it as it moves up along the San Andreas. You can see it move along the fault zone, and you can see it where it splits right here. Watch this area that we talked about mostly today or tonight. Watch the intensity, and watch it, the disbursement. You can see it blows through Orange County. It blows right into LA. It shook like crazy as it moved beyond and moves in through the Lancaster and up into way up there, Bakersfield. All right, but look what it did. Once it hit San Bernardino in that junction right there where the San Jacinto fault hits, and I'll show you again. Watch the purple thing just go ape turd. Okay, here's the area that we spoke about the most, 1899, right here. Right, so as it comes up the San Andreas, it's already activated the San Jacinto fault, which is right through here. The Elsinore goes right through here. So right through here, as it happens, it gets to this area, and then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Do you see how it morphed off of the San Andreas onto the San Jacinto as it goes up and over, up Cajon Pass? And it kind of goes along this area and just straight into Los Angeles. It's like feeding it in intensity right through here. Look at the waves, the wave motions from that location and how it drives into Los Angeles. The incredible intensities of the S waves. And then you see how that same thing happens again as it gets past Lancaster and goes up the, I don't know what fault that is.
Well, isn't that all silt in that area too?
LA is all silt, yes. And you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. The whole basin of Los Angeles goes just behind Oxnard.
Is that 7.8?
Yes.
Salt sea sim?
Yeah, the Salt and Sea Sim, yes.
Yeah, so that's the one that's based on what they think 1690 did.
Yeah. And you know, and Oxnard's right here. So what they say is once it gets to Rancho Cucamonga, right? I'm gonna show you here. All right. Once it gets to this section, all hell breaks loose. And it just throws massive waves right down to Sierra Madre, right into Los Angeles. It's already pounded Santa Ana down here in Orange County. But once it gets by it, it does it again through the Santa Clarita, Fillmore, Ojai, Santa Barbara. So it's not so far-fetched that when you mentioned the Santa Barbara quake happening right afterward, that something, shook loose out here. And we had, I think you said it had a tsunami as well. Shortly thereafter, the El Cajon Pass out here. I think that's what you're saying.
Well, no, it went San Andreas, San Jacinto was December 8th.
Right.
Santa Barbara was December 21st.
There you go.
And when I looked up the tsunamis, because they have records of tsunamis in Hawaii, there was a tsunami that hit Hawaii December 21st, 1812. So same day as the Santa Barbara quake. So I thought, well, that's pretty interesting.
It sure is.
So it had to come from somewhere.
Yeah. And
it's odd that it's the same day.
Right. And we're talking about, the main fault through here, the Cucamonga, which turns in, we talked about this Raymond fault, Sierra Madre, and the Malibu and Santa Monica fault. We talked about that the other day. Now, the backside of it came through the Santa Clarita Valley, through Fillmore, San Jacinto. We heard about that one. Oak Ridge, and Ventura, Pintos Point, and there's Santa Barbara out here. Mission Ridge, Arroyo Prieta, and Santa Ana out here, right? These Red Mountain, somewhere out here, I don't know exactly where they centered that other fault, but here it is right here. That's 1812. Major quake out there, 7.1. And we talk about 1899, that's 1812. They don't have a record of that other one that he's talking about. He talked about it hitting December in Hawaii, a tsunami. Also, I think you said there's evidence of it hitting Santa Barbara and Los Angeles too. Am I correct?
Yeah, there's evidence of Santa Barbara for sure. I don't know about Los Angeles because the little community then was way inland. It wasn't right at the coast.
Okay.
Whatever they called it, because it had a long name, then Los Angeles on the end.
Right.
Whatever the name, I can't remember. It's a big
Buenaventura or Buena something, yeah.
Yeah, and it was farther inland, so they felt the Santa Barbara quake.
Yeah,
and
Los Angeles is way inland, by the way.
Yeah, and Santa Barbara itself, they got the tsunami there, wherever the mission was.
Yeah, I've been to the mission in Santa Barbara. It got walloped pretty good. It's on the side of a hill, if I remember here, Mission Ridge right here. So it got walloped pretty good, and they have never really fixed it.
And apparently the same thing happened in San Francisco now earlier that year.
Right.
They don't have the exact date. They just said it was early in the year when I was looking up the San Francisco stuff, and they said it damaged whatever the name of the mission was there and a bunch of other stuff. And there was a tsunami. Well, they called it a tidal wave back then, of course. They didn't use the word tsunami. So when they talk about it, a notable tidal wave came in the San Francisco Bay and messed up stuff, but there wasn't, of course, too many people there then because it was just a Spanish mission outpost in 1812, same as all the other ones in SoCal.
Right.
Because you have to go in and, I don't know, it's just crazy, all this historical stuff, because I'm a freaking nut.
Yeah, but you know what? You add color to a drawing, a black and white drawing. You add color to it. And that helps because the way your research, and you're doing, and then, trying to put it together and simplify it for people to see, hey, these things happen in these kind of areas. And this is, when this happens, that kind of happens. And you draw a historical topography or what do you call it? Tapestry.
Yeah.
And it really helps in understanding how these are, because all you hear is, Murrieta had an earthquake. All right, where the hell's Murrieta?
Yeah,
all right.
North and South Dakota felt the new Madrid quakes because I looked it up.
Yeah, all right, and North Dakota had some bad weather today because the weather guy was chasing some storm.
We had a tornado like 10 miles north of us this evening.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I saw that and I went, oh shoot. But when I saw you come on, I go, okay, good. He's all right.
And I've been doing New Mexico quakes lately too, just for fun. And I found out the biggest quakes in New Mexico were in Socorro, Mexico in 1906, right after the big San Fran quake.
We're going to get there. We're starting in LA. We're branching out. I think we nailed Southern Cal pretty hard. I don't think we got a full understanding of the San Diego area yet. Maybe that's kind of where we would kind of branch, because we are kind of inland, 100 miles inland. We don't really have anything along the coast,
Well, we still have to do Elsinore.
Elsinore, we're moving that direction. Yeah,
and probably do Newport, Inglewood, Rose
Newport,
Canyon.
Inglewood, Rose Canyon. Yes, sir.
And then we'll go off the coast. We've mentioned some of them before, but there's other ones out there.
Right. The trench, and
And
I'm hitting the wall, man.
Yeah, and I never did I did basically 3 out of the 7 San Jacinto quakes, but
yeah.
there's
Well, you hit 7 of them pretty well, all the 6s. You can see here 1892 a 7.3. That was down in Mexico. We have the Landers. We have and these are all modern quakes.
Yeah, the 1892 one is basically the same place as the 2010 Baja.
Right.
They're both the same.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. The 1812 happened right here. That's what we talked about. We have the Santa Barbara one off the coast, and there is another one way out here, 1927, had a 7.1, which we hadn't talked about. That's off Lompoc. And we've talked about it before, about the 1952 7.5, which is the largest quake in Southern Cal. If you call it Southern Cal, that's the largest quake. The Owens Valley, that thing's all over the place. I don't know what they're going to call this one. In my mind, it was an 8, but they might call it 7.6. All right, that's what they're calling it. And
Susan Huff, who's the current head of the USGS, said it should be 7.9 because she's done all these presentations on it. And I should say the current head of USGS at Pasadena.
Right. And we have the great San Francisco quake, 1899. That's when we talked about, not the great one, but that was a precursor, 1899, then 1906. Was a 5.6, 1899, and then the big one right there. Freaking thing! Come on.
Wow.
You won't give it to me.
We just found out all this crazy stuff going on in 1899. Well, that was only 7 years before 1906, so you're getting pretty close.
Exactly, and in geologic time, right? And yeah, 7.4, 1838, Central Cal or Northern Cal, right there along the San Andreas, which led right into San Francisco. And San Francisco got nailed several times. Even in Oakland, got nailed several times. And they all talk about the great San Francisco earthquake and what the Army did, and blowing shit up. A mistake, I think, on his part, but whatever.
Well, wait till we get to San Francisco and all the faults up there.
We'll get there. Yeah, it's a mess, no doubt. Well, we're going to move up the coast. As we move to the coast, we'll jump to Ventura and the central part, Lompoc, and we'll continue up the San Andreas along the coast. And to help build a consensus and understanding of what happened along all these faults and the direction we're going. And then, of course, we have Professor Nick and his class talking about Baja to BC, which we're way south of Baja to BC, by the way, because that stopped, and most of their talk was 80 million years ago. But there is a creep that's going north, and
San Simeon quake was 2003, I think.
Yeah, San Simeon. Yeah. So we're by the prison. Yeah.
We'll get to that because that's the faults that go up on their way to San Fran. So we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, the Calaveras fault, and then all the main faults, and then the little splays. Appreciate you guys.
Out that way, I think it's the one that goes right along the coast, off the coast, is Hosgri San Gregorino, I think it's called.
Right. I appreciate you.
We're saying
yes, thank you guys.
Yep, it's fun.
Canuck, thank you for the knowledge tonight, man. It's almost overwhelming because of how much you know, and you've just got it in the back of your head, and just able to just pull that filing cabinet up and whip out that knowledge for us. I mean, it's mind blowing, dude.
Well,
It
he's out
really
there
is.
studying it day in and day out, which is great. And I appreciate you
Yes.
so much.
Like I pretty much do something every day
I know you do.
where I'm looking up whatever it is in between all my other bazillion things. I'm doing at the same
You're
time.
right.
But you'll be surprised. My bazillion other things sometimes lead to other things. That's how it works. The Israelis might be blowing up the Dead Sea Fault next.
We might have a problem with World War III here starting. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, me too.
I should have locked my door. My mother-in-law came busting in here wanting a cigarette. I mean, a lighter, and I don't have one. It's like, you got them all.
So this one was just a Jacinto episode. And it was quite the episode.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything left from you? How about Walleye King? What you got? Anything?
I kind of hit the wall with the just trying to grasp the knowledge tonight and listen to everything. I mean, wow, mind blowing. It really is.
It's wild stuff.
I mean, and to see the repeating patterns time after time after time. I mean, it's pretty amazing that how these people don't work together a little bit closer to figure out what just one guy can figure out.
Well, it's like this time for 1899. I had never even looked to see what was happening in South America. I have no clue. I only did from Guerrero on up because it was already obvious within that year. But I imagine there was probably stuff happening in South America too. I just never went
Oh,
that
I'm
far
sure.
looking up.
Probably is.
Sure. Which would reinforce the repeating pattern that you're coming up with time after time after time after time, you know?
Right.
Well, I've seen it so many times now. Like sometimes I don't even have to go as far as what I could do, but
right,
it's just wild. And then I'll focus on certain areas when one pops up that hasn't happened for a while, and then I see, oh crap, that's the same year as this other one that happened. So now I got to see, oh, that could be connected to that. So then it just adds more to it. And then you if you were really crazy, you could add landslides and sinkholes.
And I like the idea of those sand blows, landslides, sinkholes, because those are all precursors, openings in the land that we saw before in Mexico as well as in Arizona, and watching things happen even in Texas. And those are all indicators of things happening as the ground is it's moving slow, and then weather affecting us, like downpours, like serious downpours. We see that over time how the land appears to get liquidated, and then it's like, oh shoot, we got an earthquake.
Because in New Madrid,
the land is moved in many ways.
Yeah, in New Madrid, it's actually a bunch of the sand blows that they figured out the last 4 times that it went off. If you actually read the studies.
Right. Hey, and when they have a sand blow, man, they have a sand blow. Yeah, those are insane.
But there's other places that do that in the world too.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
And I think Turkey's one of the places because they were talking about sand blows in the new thing I was reading about 2023.
Yeah, the main quakes. I saw some of those.
Yeah, the 7.5 and the 7.8. Yeah, there was a lot of sand blows in that one, wasn't it?
There's 2 7s and a 6.8. Mm-hmm. And in this new study, because it just came out like July or August.
I wonder if there could be sand blows under the water too when there's earthquakes, like out in the Kurils or the Cometics.
I would say yes.
I wonder.
Or methane blowouts.
Methane blows, yeah. I wonder if they're related, because when I was in Cali, you can smell an earthquake coming. There's a stench in the air. I don't know what it's called. Some people call it methane, but it didn't smell like a fart to me. It smelled like something else.
Yeah, if you read about both 1989 Loma Prieta and 1868 Hayward Fault, they smelled stuff before it happened.
Yep. And you remember right before Ridgecrest, I think it was in out there in Palm Springs, they were smelling stuff.
Yeah.
So that's interesting too.
And I was in another chat
Old culprits.
not too long ago about
Yeah.
people were talking about Ridgecrest because there's a whole bunch of people from
It's
California.
kind of like a stinky feet smell, but kind of different. Yeah.
And they were
No,
talking
it's
about
accurate.
Ridgecrest for whatever reason. It was a bunch of people from California. And I said, "Do you guys remember this?" And I started listing off these crazy things, and they said, "Holy crap, that wasn't them, was it?" And they were going, "Oh no!" And I said, "Yeah." But then at the end, I said, "Well, none of the stuff is related, even though it happened right before it." So then they all got laughing because that's what I always do now. I come up with
it's interesting that the Ridgecrest is connected to the Hidalgo Fault, and the black. I just found it by messing around. The Hidalgo Fault, which is the 1999 Desert Fault 7.1.
Yeah, they're all east. Well,
Yeah.
they call it Eastern California Shear Zone.
Yeah.
But it's Walker Lane.
Walker Lane. Yeah. Kind of different. And it's right through all the volcanics.
Yeah.
It's weird. From Costa Range all the way down to Mexico. It's all volcanic. And there's like these rifts or it's kind of like rifts. And you got to wonder.
Yeah, and basically everything's Eastern California Shear Zone from the San Andreas east till you get to Joe, pretty much.
Wouldn't it be weird that that's the end of the subducted plate that went through at 100 million years ago that created the Sierra Nevadas?
Well, it's the one that had the big arrow shape because that's what the intermountain seismic zone is. It's a big arrow shape, just like Mescalera and Gaiacham or whatever they call it. That big gigantic arrow. Yeah. It's the exact same shape. So it's pretty funny. When we got talking about all the mantle stuff, I actually looked at it and I said, well, jumping said, where that arrow's coming in, it's a big gigantic arrow. It's the same as the intermountain seismic zone. Why would that be? Well, because it made the intermountain seismic zone when it smashed into
Thank you, Party.
Fun.
Reality? I think we've been in reality.
Life is real. It's fun stuff.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for what you've done with the effort you put in there, Canuck. We'll have another rabbit hole on Saturday, God willing. And thank you everybody for being here. It's been fun. And I don't know how long we're into this this one, but I think we're in here a minute. 2 hours, 17 minutes. Hey, let me see if I can't put that commercial on there for you, so you can tell about what we do here on JSL. And in the morning here. Let me see if I can get it going quicker. Oh shoot! Hold on, stop. Okay, there we go. Shoot, howdy, boy, that was close. Let me change the share here. And
life, it's all random too, even though we're all here at the same time and place talking about all this stuff. So it's fun stuff.
Yeah, share screen. What the hell? Window. There we go. Share that. And just to help people understand what we do here at JSL. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Love you, buds.
Good night.
Hi, I'm Joe of the Joe Slick Live Show. My interactive live show is on twitch.tv/Joe Slick Live. Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and occasionally in the evenings at 7. During the live show, I review